Hello? Rescue hooks to rescue, Mayday! Get ahead, West. Fast, Mayday, what's your location? Get the panel out of here, hurry up! We need radio silence, baby. Water in that 2.5 inch line. 48 inch water in a 2.5 inch line. To the rope, to the rope. 35 in the rear, 35 in the rear.
Welcome to the Emergency Traffic Podcast. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Emergency Traffic Podcast, where we review firefighter line of duty death reports and try to learn from these tragic incidents to prevent them from recurring. I'm your host, Paul, and joining me today is my often co-host, Denis, my cousin, who's also a retired fire chief. And hi, Denis, how's it going?
Hey, Paul, how are you? We're
I'm
getting a
good.
touch of winter again. We just love it this time of year when it's plus 10 centigrade and I go outside and put up my Christmas lights. And the next day it's minus 15 and blowing and snowing. And I'm awful damn glad I got out the day before.
Yeah, I did my Christmas lights before we hit the snow, but it was been really cold, and today it's warm, and we're into our winter storm watch actually for tonight. So we're waiting to see.
Major squalls in off the ocean. It's cold and very wintry looking, but come on now. It's a week and a half till winter officially arrives. So
Yeah, well, got to get some cold. You guys get those big dumps of snow down there, but we don't get the big dumps, but we just get
we
the
haven't,
cold.
the last couple of years, things are changing.
Yeah, we haven't had the big dumps for a few years. We're due. Okay, well, let's see some current events that you and I were just talking about. The Oxfordshire in the UK, we've done a few episodes in the UK, and we have some followers there. They're our third most followed area for the podcast and the YouTube channel. And they want to cut. Oxfordshire is cutting 42 firefighters from full-time staff and possibly reducing the staff stations from 25 down to 5. So the union is protesting, and they're threatening to go on strike. And they really, it's a big issue. And it's not just there. We're seeing this in Canada here. We're seeing it in Red Deer and in Winnipeg and in Halifax, where fire departments and firefighters are screaming that they don't have enough staffing to respond. I mean, look at the fatal nursing home fire there in Fall River, where they didn't have enough staffing to rescue all the people. It's becoming a big problem. There was a counselor on the news 3 days ago in Memphis, Tennessee. The firefighters wanted a 2% raise, and she accused the firefighters of raping the city every budget year. It was terrible. I watched the clip, and it was just like, I can't believe this. And the firefighters were making US $42,000 a year was their nominal wage or something. So, and they're accused of raping the city. It's crazy. Anyway,
for a 56-hour work week.
Yeah, exactly. Rock Falls, Illinois, the chiefs that were found guilty in a civil suit for a line of duty death of a firefighter who went through the floor and wasn't rescued promptly, wasn't aware that he was in there. All kinds of issues around it. There's a great article by Chief Ludwig. He wrote an article for the defense or the prosecution. I mean, anyway, they're appealing their judgment, so they've followed an extension to have their appeal recognized. So we'll see what happens on that one. But it's not we're seeing more and more of these, chiefs, and actually, as a B-Shifter Blue Card Firefighter Close Calls just put out an article today on their website talking about all the command failures we're seeing lately, and we need to clean up our command and be more effective. And that's exactly what this lawsuit was related to as well. There was 4 firefighters charged in Florida for hazing new recruits. Apparently they beat them and waterboarded them. It's just crazy that in 2025 we're getting this hazing stuff in fire halls. What kind of dinosaurs are we to get this
toxic.
Still?
It's just toxic is what it is. It's not camaraderie at all. It's toxic.
Yeah, that always pissed me off for years with fire departments, and it's still going on, which upsets me to no end.
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting one in Ohio. The fire department, it's called North County Fire Department in Ohio, is suing a city they provide service to under contract called Riverview, next door city. The city put in speed bumps that don't meet the NFPA and other recommendations of the Highway Traffic Act, and they're damaging apparatus and they're causing delays in response because they put these speed bumps in, but they're too big or too long or too something, and it's damaging trucks and delaying response. So they're actually suing the city because they put them in without approval from the contract fire provider, which was in their contract that all that kind of stuff has to be approved by the fire department. And they're also not getting, they're issuing occupancy permits without consulting the fire service. And they're having high hazard stuff without approving the fire service. So the city is, or the county fire department is suing the city, which is kind of interesting. It was in Fire Rescue Magazine online.
Yeah. Well, I always find it odd, and as a fire chief, one of the things that we were always striving to do was improve our overall response time, and a big part of the response time wasn't the dispatch and turnout; it was travel, and travel time is affected by traffic, and traffic is affected by the number of people on the road, but also the road design and so forth. And when municipalities go out of their way to slow traffic down because it's safer for cyclists and safer for pedestrians and so forth, there's a kickback on that, and the kickback is it slows the traffic down and everybody else slows down. It includes the ability of emergency vehicles to navigate the streets, so it has a deleterious effect on the ability of trucks to get to the scene of an incident. It slows everything down, at peak periods, of course. So,
Yeah.
but nobody, I think, in the traffic department or the politicians who want their streets slowed down has any consideration whatsoever. So it's up to fire department management to make sure that that's a front and center issue, and to make sure that council knows that when they make decisions, there are consequences. Because
Yeah. Yep.
as I always say, it's you've got a certain number of resources, and you've got certain factors you got to work with. Whether you got level crossings, railway crossings in your city, or you got lift bridges that block the roads, or you've got traffic calming on major routes, whatever the case may be. If it slows your response and it wasn't, you've got no way of controlling it, you need to make sure that people know that.
Yeah, so it's good that their contract provider is going after the city. Obviously, it's come to the end result suing them rather than working together, which is unfortunate. But no, I remember actually one of my mentor fire chiefs that I worked under, Chief James Clark in Fort Saskatchewan. When I first started, he took me through a neighborhood that had been designed a little too tightly, and the streets were too narrow and stuff like that. And he said, "This was my mistake, and I won't repeat it again." And then he gave me a manual. He says, "This is the manual planning has to follow now so that we don't run into these problems." So it is up to us, the risk managers for the community, to make sure that we don't build risk into our communities. So no, that's a good point.
Which includes things like parking.
Yep. That
In
was the
my last
problem.
job, I lived on a residential street, and the residential street was a nice wide street, except the street wound, and it wound to make it more interesting as a residence and to slow it down. And then people would park on both sides of the road.
Right.
And once you do that, you try and get your 55-foot aerial truck down that street,
Mm-hmm.
it got a lot more interesting.
No kidding. Got to buy a tiller, like Doug would say. Hey, where's Doug
Oh,
today?
yeah.
He's too busy with family and stuff. But anyway, a tiller. Texas, speaking apparatus, a Texas apparatus driver was charged for a motor vehicle collision during response. They found the operator of the fire truck to be irresponsible and causing an accident, contributing to an accident because of speed and not yielding the right of way. I haven't read the article, and I remember seeing it last week. You mentioned it, but this is something we
Yeah.
have to be careful of, right?
Yeah. Well, he was charged under their Motor Vehicle Act or Traffic Act or whatever the case may be. So I don't know in the end whether that'll be upheld or not, but certainly that was what happened, right?
As was the one in Florida where the train hit the fire truck and he went through the crossing. Same thing.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
But I mean, I remember from 35, 40 years ago here in Nova Scotia in Dartmouth at the time, there was a fire truck went through a red light, and it was a blind corner. Other traffic couldn't see. It was on a hill, and there was differences in elevation. There was a cemetery and a wall. Anyway, he went through the red light and smacked a vehicle, and I believe somebody was killed or at least seriously injured, and he was charged under the Highway Traffic Act. for
Yeah, I
failing to
mean,
take due care. I mean, if you read those sections of your acts, you do not have the right to just charge through red lights and stop signs. And all these great videos on YouTube of this truck responding, and they're doing these massive 60, 70 miles an hour down a city street. Wonderful until you hit something, and then it's not so wonderful.
yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, you need to stop and ask for the right of way and then proceed when everybody's stopped. That's the trick, is you got to stop. Yes, I know it's a pain in the butt. I'm rolling through. I can see everything, but if you miss something, the
Yeah.
consequences are extreme. You need to ask for the right of way, not take the right of
Yeah.
way.
In fact, the legislation, the way it's worded is you must ensure that there's no issues, basically, is what it says.
Right. Because,
Until it's safe to proceed, is what it says. And if you
yeah.
hit something, I guess it wasn't.
Yep, exactly. And the last one in the current events file here we had for today was this week the British Columbia government was fined by WCB in British Columbia, or the Occupational Health and Safety Act in British Columbia, fined over $700,000 for the death of a firefighter that was working on a wildfire that UTV rolled over, and the firefighter that was in the UTV was killed. I don't have the details on the report yet. I'm going to try to get it, and we'll cover it in an episode, because that's actually the second UTV fatality that I remember here in the last few months in the news. There was one in the States as well that we're going to cover. So, but yeah, the UTVs, everybody's getting them. They're great. They're handy. They're great for recon. They're great for hazmat calls when you're moving in and out of a hot zone with your Gumby suits on. Or recon doing gas detection, and they're great for wildland firefighting and rescuing people on the trails. Everybody's active and they're out there doing their bicycling, hiking, whatever. The UTVs help a lot, but we need to use them carefully. We need to train people, and we need to operate them safely with a seatbelt on and with a helmet on, and some sort of restraint devices. I used to be deputy fire chief out in Clearwater, and every long weekend we went to so many UTV accidents. They were civilians, but I mean, we had the same issues. And so it's something that we need to watch out for. And the government is paying attention, because they just fined the BC Wildfire Service $700,000, to try to make a stink about it a bit, I think.
Yeah, basically it was the highest amount they were allowed to fine them. And the subtext, the way I read it is you're not paying attention. Maybe this will get your attention.
Yeah.
So
it's a shame we have to do that, but it's safety. Safety of the responders is paramount. Okay, so we'll get off our soapboxes here and get into the episode.
don't hurt yourself getting down.
Thanks. This week's episode is from the NIOSH report, F20 2020-21 number 20, and also the OSHA report from the Illinois State Occupational Health and Safety Administration, 1569882. The
Illinois,
reports, it's known as the Memora incident. I'm not sure why. It's also known as the Springfield incident because it was in the Springfield area of Chicago, which unfortunately we've been to.
It happened on North Memora Avenue is why.
Okay. Thank you. You always do more research than I do. That's a great job. So we've been to Chicago a few times on the podcast in the past. Episode 40 we published in December of 2023, a couple of years ago. 2 firefighters died during a collapse at an abandoned commercial building in December of 2010. I think that's the one where there was a whole bunch of firefighters in this abandoned commercial building, and all of a sudden the roof fell on them, and 2 of the firefighters were fatally injured in the roof collapse. And we also, in episode number 61 that was published in November of 2024, when a firefighter died at a multifamily residential fire in November of 2012. So not unfamiliar, unfortunately, but it's a big agency with lots of calls and lots of firefighters. So I guess this is going to happen. The incident occurred on December 16th of 2021. A 30-year-old male career candidate firefighter, I don't know why I put candidate in there, emergency medical technician, was found unresponsive in a first-floor apartment of a 2.5-story apartment building at a structure fire. His name is Mashon Plummer.
The reason he's a candidate firefighter is because Chicago has this apprenticeship.
Oh yes,
where you've got to work for a while, and you're being evaluated and then you're accepted or not. So it's a lot like probationary, I guess. In
Yeah,
some
yeah,
departments, they would call it that. So
right, exactly. In the fire, there was also several civilians in the building. One of them was fatally injured, and two they were all rescued, and I believe two maybe survived for a while. I don't know if they survived in the end or not. The fire department in this incident is Chicago Fire Department, obviously a career fire department. 5,143 full-time members, fire commissioners assisted by a first deputy fire commissioner, and a first deputy fire commissioner oversees the 4 bureaus. So the fire commissioner is sort of like a fire chief, I guess, because he's overseeing direct supervision of ops, prevention, administrative services, logistics. Each bureau is commanded by a deputy fire commissioner. The Bureau of Operations is the largest staff bureau, of course, with a personnel strength of more than 4,500 uniformed firefighters and paramedics, many of whom are cross-trained. The Bureau of Operations consists of 4 divisions: suppression, rescue, emergency medical services, and special operations, and the Office of Fire Investigations. The Fire Suppression and Rescue Division is responsible for the day-to-day operations of all fire suppression companies in the 98, count them, 98 firehouses dispersed throughout the city. When those companies are not fighting fires or responding to EMS incidents, they're responsible for conducting daily training, school inspections, fire hydrant inspections within their first due district. Know your hood, right? The division staffs 96 engine companies, 61 truck companies, 4 squads, heavy rescues, which are also two-piece. That's where the rescue and a teles or a snorkel, 55 or 65-foot snorkel, they go together as a two-piece company. There's 25 battalions or battalion chiefs, 14 deputy district chiefs, and 8 district chiefs, which are divided into 5 districts. The department covers a land area of 228 square miles, 37 miles of rivers and waterways, and serves a population of 2.697 million and responds to nearly 900,000 calls annually. The department's members that are assigned to the operations division work a 24 on, 48 off schedule with 3 platoons or shifts. If an engine or truck company operates short, which would be 4, they operate under a manning variance of 4 instead of 5. So they normally have 5 staffed, but they always have at least 4 in the truck or the engine. There are 4 squad companies, which are the two-piece companies I mentioned, which is a heavy rescue and a 55-foot snorkel. That's the articulating platform snorkels.
platforms, you think?
They're platforms.
Yeah.
They're snorkels. Yeah.
Okay. Yep. Right.
They're the old Pittman boom from British
Gotcha.
Columbia. They actually came from BC originally.
Where are they replacing those from, I wonder?
Rosenbauer bought the rights through Smeal. No, sorry, not Rosenbauer. Rev Group Smeal. No, they're Rosenbauers. But Smeal can build the aerial. We went through a long discussion on our messaging about 4 months about that as to who's supplying the aerial. Because Snorkel went out of business when American LaFrance went bankrupt.
Yeah. You don't much see them anymore, that's for sure.
I like them myself. The 85-foot snorkel, it's a bulletproof apparatus, really easy to operate. No electronics. It's all direct hydraulic, and it's really quite dependable.
There's something to be said for that.
There is. Where's Doug when we need him?
Hey, you listening, fire chiefs?
You want to do this one?
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about the training in the department. So this career department had enacted requirements that exceeded the state's requirements. So this is Chicago, Illinois. So the fire department hires candidates through the city's civil service process. That's pretty common for big cities. The fire department gives recruitment tests for both single role as a paramedic and for firefighter positions. And remember, we mentioned that a lot of them are cross-trained. Recruits that pass the exam are placed on an eligibility list, and that list is sorted in a lottery order. So I guess once you're on the list, there's no ranking, it appears. The lottery order is then referred to the department as vacancies become available. Recruits must then pass a background check, a physical abilities check, and a medical examination, and all that must comply with NFPA 1582, which is the standard on comprehensive occupational medical programs for fire departments. So the firefighter in this case, whose designation and his riding position that day of the incident was engine 94 nozzle man. As I mentioned, firefighter plumber. So anytime we mention engine 94 nozzle man, we're referring to Michon Plummer. So he was the fellow who died in this incident, firefighter. Anyway, he had completed a total of 960 hours of training, which consisted of recruit school curriculum and company drills between 2020 and 2021. That's quite a few hours, Paul, for 1 year. So
That's
year
we're
and a
talking
half or whatever.
pilot hours here.
Yeah, so a lot of hours in basic training, and he'd been on as a candidate on the job for about a year, right? So there'd been some hours there too. So the lieutenant who was on the engine, who was firefighter plumber's direct supervisor that particular day, he was a relief lieutenant or a floater. So that means he was a lieutenant, not a first class firefighter. So he is a relief officer or a floater. That means he works out of a staffing pool, and he's on an assigned shift, but he's not assigned a permanent firehouse. So you're down a lieutenant in station 18. You're in station 18 today, and you might be your next shift. You might be in station 26. It would move around, but you're a lieutenant, so you wouldn't necessarily know everybody on your truck every day. You might walk in the first time you've seen them, first time they've seen you, etc. So there's a risk in that, obviously. Anyway, he reports to a different firehouse for a finite period of time. So he might be assigned a month of shifts or something like that. Anyway, that lieutenant had completed 950 hours of training between 2001 and 2018. So, and there was company training also that occurred when those guys were on shift, about 2 hours a shift, and that's not included in those numbers above that I just gave you.
So the building in this instance, the structure was a 2.5-story apartment building that was built in 1922. The dimensions were 25 feet wide by 50 feet long, so they're narrow and deep, if you will. The total square footage for the apartment building was 3,636 square feet, but that was on 3 floors. The basement was about 1,000 square feet, the first floor was 1,200 square feet, and the second floor was 1,300 square feet. These are very common. It's similar to a brownstone in New York or in Boston. It's a Chicago kind of a character home, sort of a stone-looking building we'll post some pictures on our socials. And if you're listening on YouTube, I'm putting the pictures in the community posts there too, so you can go look at the pictures in there if you're on YouTube. I haven't figured out how to tie them directly to the episode on YouTube, but I'm working on it. Old guys learn slow. Let's see. The structure was constructed of ordinary construction, type 3, had a parapet roof. The building is known as a brick 2-flat or 2 flats, which consists of ordinary construction, 1 flat above the first floor, on the first floor, 1 on the second floor, and a basement that's either storage, an apartment as well, another flat, or a laundry room.
So this was described as a 2.5 story. You heard Paul say that in the beginning, and so 2.5 story means what we would call here in the Northeast is a split entry, and
Yes.
Meaning that you walk in the front door and you go down a set of stairs to the basement or up a set of stairs to the first floor. Now, if you're in New York and you've got a walk up, in Montreal, same thing. You've got a walk up. The stairs are actually external to the building. And you would go in through the basement through a set of external stairs and up to the first floor through a set of external stairs. This here, they're internal. They're inside the front door. So kind of like a split entry is what we would call them. So that's what they mean by 2.5 stories.
That's
when you look at the photo, it's
analogy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good analogy. So the structure is approximately 1.5 miles from the assigned fire station that was responding, and it has hydrant coverage, although Denis wasn't impressed with finding the hydrant because it's a really low kind of 2 ports on the one side, 265 mil or 2.5-inch ports out the front, and it's only about maybe 2 feet off the ground. So like, how do you find it in a snowbank? Although it did have the little metal post sticking up so you could see maybe where it was.
Yes, my comment was a large dog using the hydrant would have hidden it well.
The brick 2 flats have a unique profile in history in the city's architecture. The construction of brick 2 flats date back more than 100 years. They are similar to horizontal townhouses, basically. Brick 2 flats architecture is the city's comparison to Brooklyn brownstones or the row homes of Philadelphia. These structures are often found in impressive ensembles in the various parts of the city. They have a facade of brick or stone, typical feature of an entry porch to one side and a projecting bay windows on the other side. All the features are surmounted by an ornate cornice of brick or stone. Postage stamp front yards, in that they're very small, connect to a narrow gangway between the closely spaced buildings. When these structures are built, plans and building materials could even be purchased as kits. You could buy a kit. That's really cool. We need kit houses again.
So Paul mentioned that they have uh, a roof treatment on these and cornices or bricks. So, like, basically, this is a facade on the front that hides the roof, and in this particular case, makes it look a little bit like a castle. So imagine now arriving on the street and trying to ladder the roof with the aerial. You can't come over the front because there's a parapet basically there. So you got to come in down the sides of the buildings to get in properly, or be prepared to climb down over this
Well,
parapeted
if you
facade
have
that's on the front.
a Bronto or a T-Rex or the new Rosenbauer, or what do they call it, Cobra, which is a European-style aerial ladder with the last 10
Right,
feet or so that bends
right,
down. Yeah,
right.
yeah.
So also, if you get fire through the roof, you could very well get instability on this front wall, and you've got a collapse hazard as a
Right.
result of that
Yeah.
too. So,
But they're
so these
pretty. I
buildings
mean,
would require particular firefighting knowledge, is where I'm going with that,
okay. They're so cool
and
looking. It's
equipment.
when people cared about the look of a building. It was cool. The basement was occupied by 2 males and a female at the time of the fire. The first floor was occupied by a family that had called 911 and tried to notify the occupants in the basement of the fire. The second floor was being renovated at the time of the fire. The owner's son was living in the apartment upstairs, but was not in the apartment at the time of the fire. A still alarm was transmitted for box 11329 at 2:06 hours in the morning, 2:06:25, for a basement fire in an apartment building. The companies were dispatched was Battalion 8 and Engine 94, Engine 7, Truck 58, and Truck 53. So 2 engines and 2 trucks. At 2:13, so 6 minutes later, a rapid intervention team dispatch was also transmitted for the same box number. The units dispatched were Battalion 7, which is Truck 57, Squad 2, which is that 2-apiece company, and Ambulance 7. Maybe why Chicago has snorkels is because of these unique type buildings that they need that articulation. I think every fire department should have a variety of aerial apparatus, different kinds for different applications. But that's just my little soapbox, and I won't get on it because Doug's not here to fight. The weather on December 16th at 0:51 hours was cloudy and windy. The temperature was 64 degrees. The dew point was 58. The humidity was 80%. Winds for the south-southwest. The wind speed was 28 miles per hour with wind gusts up to 45 miles per hour. Barometric pressure was 28 inches. A 10-mile-per-hour wind, this is a note here, a 10-mile-per-hour wind can create wind-impacted fire. There had been no precipitation in the past 24 hours.
So, Paul, 28 miles an hour is 45 kilometers an hour for us northerners, and 45-mile-an-hour gusts is 72 kilometers an hour. So this is a possibility of a wind-driven fire here. We've had those before, haven't we? We've talked about those before.
Oh yeah, we have. We had that incident that I mentioned. It was in November. We covered it in November of 25. It happened in 2005 in Wyoming. It was a multifamily, sort of a unique style building like this one. And the firefighters were up on the half story on top, and a fire blew out of the attic and trapped both the firefighters in that attic. That's a great episode. That was in Evanston, Wyoming, episode number 71. So that's another wind-driven fire. And there's been a few. We're going to do some more too.
You'll notice that we often mention the direction of the wind and how it's impacted. And this particular one, the wind was on the Bravo Charlie corner, and you're going to find out that there's a door there on that corner.
Exactly. Yeah.
So now we're going to talk a little bit about the investigation. In other words, the incident itself. So this incident happened on December 16th in 2021. So what, 5 years ago, almost to the day. So the Office of Emergency Management and Communications, dispatch in other words, or the 911 center, received a 911 call at 02:05:51 hours, so almost 6 minutes after 2 in the morning, from an occupant in an apartment building stating that there was smoke in the building and that they noticed there was a fire in the basement apartment. Remember, there's 3 apartments. There's a first floor, second floor, and a basement apartment. So the occupant from the second floor apartment and an occupant from the first floor apartment then tried to enter the basement apartment, but they found that the smoke was too heavy. So dispatch transmitted a still alarm for box 111-329 at 02:06, 25 hours. So roughly half a minute after they received the 911 call. And this call out was for a basement fire in an apartment building. Maine then dispatched, and they refer to Maine several times through the script, but what they're referring to is dispatch on the Maine dispatch channel. That's what Maine means. Anyway, Maine dispatched Battalion 8, Engine 94, Engine 7, Truck 58, and Truck 53 for a report of a structure fire. It should be noted that on the December 15th and 16th shifts, Truck 53 was running with a manning variance, meaning they were running 4 instead of 5 firefighters. So there were 35 companies citywide that were allowed to run on that variance. So if you count the numbers up on that, that's 20 firefighters assigned to the call, the first call, which includes Battalion 8. At 02:06, 37 hours, an occupant called 911 stating there was smoke and fire showing from the basement. Engine 94 then arrived on scene at 02:10 and 38 seconds. Engine 94 lieutenant provided his scene size up upon arrival, in which he stated Engine 94 is southbound at a 2-story structure with nothing showing. Truck 58, which arrived at 02:1100 hours, which was half a minute later, then reported smoke showing. And when Engine 94 was doing his size up, he reported that the front door inside Alpha was open and the door to the basement apartment on the Alpha side was open. And there's another door that's around on the Bravo side back by the Charlie corner that was closed. The Engine 94 lieutenant entered the building on the side Alpha door, the main door, and went down the stairs to the basement where he found a small fire on a couch. And the couch was near the side Alpha basement wall. Down the stairs and turn left, there's the wall at the front, and that's where the couch was. And he reported that around 02:11:30 hours. He then went back up the stairs and exited the building. At that point, he ordered Engine 94's nozzle man, firefighter plumber, who's our fatality, and an Engine 94 backup man to stretch an attack line from the engineer's side and lead out. That's misleading because the hose actually comes off the rear of the truck, but it's to the left. So the Engine 94 lieutenant told Engine 94 nozzle plumber to take the hose line down the stairs approximately 5 to 6 steps and advised the fire was on the left in the basement. Engine 94 lieutenant then went back down to the basement to wait on the nozzle man, firefighter plumber, to arrive.
So at 2:12:16 hours, so another minute later, the dispatch transmitted a working fire for box 111-329, which was to just where Truck 57, Squad 2, and Command Van, and Ambulance 7, Ambulance 52, an EMS field supervisor were all dispatched then because it's a working fire, so they're upgrading the alarm.
So that adds another 20 people, including 11 firefighters and a few paramedics.
So we're definitely meeting 1710 staffing for a multifamily structure, which is often a problem in our podcast is when we don't have the right staffing. But here they definitely have the staffing, which is great.
Yeah, we're up around 40 people assigned on this call now. So,
which for a multifamily, that's good, even though it's a small multifamily with only 3 suites. Engine 94 nozzleman plumber helped 94 engineer pull a horseshoe load with the 1 3/4 hose connected to a 2.5-inch hose. So what we might know as a Cisco, I think, with the Y on it. Engine 94.
Yeah, we used to call them leader lines, so different names.
Yep, and that's what the Y is called in the hardware catalogs is leader line Y. The Engine 94 engineer handed Engine 94 nozzleman, firefighter plumber, the nozzle as he stretched the line across the front yard to the front door. Also, Engine 94 backup pulled 3 more lengths of 2.5-inch hose and helped pull the 1 3/4 hose line to the front door. Engine 94 nozzleman, firefighter plumber got the nozzle to the front door and bled the attack line of air. Engine 94 backup was flaking out the hose line in the front yard at approximately 2:13 hours. Battalion 8 arrived on scene and assumed command. Truck 58 captain and 2 firefighters entered the structure through the rear door, which is located on that Bravo side Charlie corner, which is where the wind was coming from. They opened the door and to enter the basement. When they opened the doors, this created a flow path due to the wind conditions entering through the open door on the Bravo side and exiting through the Alpha front door that was open. The fire now had a low intake and a high exhaust, perfect for the fire. At this point, the couch was in the smoldering phase, but when the flow path was created due to the opening of the Bravo side rear door, this caused the couch to reignite. The fire consumed the couch. Oh, I'll stop right there.
I would say that door that's on the Bravo side, the Charlie corner, is similar to the front door. It goes in on a platform and then there's stairs up and stairs down. So I don't know if they opened the basement door or the first floor door, but there would have been the opportunity to provide oxygen under pressure from the wind to both of those floors if those internal doors were open.
Yeah, it's the whole wood stove concept that I talk about, is that so many firefighters have never operated a wood stove. They have no concept of what happens when you open the exhaust and the intake and you have some fire in there.
Yeah, that's why those so-called dollhouse simulations now,
Yep.
you're seeing quite a few videos of them, and some departments are doing that, where and they've got, I don't know, a 1/20th scale house on a pole, and they sit there and open little doors and show you how the fire goes. I'm as an engineer, I'm actually surprised that people don't understand that, but it's quite a revelation to some people, I think.
Yeah,
And if you haven't been to a lot of fires and haven't observed a lot of fires, it might be a complete shock to you what's going on. But if you do get an opportunity to observe one of those and participate in one of those, great idea.
Yeah, those little dollhouse simulators, which are made out of like particle board, are great. Also, Flashpoint Equipment, who teaches Blue Card in Canada, they market a more sophisticated one that's reusable. That's glass on one side or both sides, and they light fires in there, and they move around with the flow path, and it really is eye opening. It's worth seeing. Definitely something to do. So the fire consumed the couch and contents on the Alpha side in the basement. Engine 94 Lieutenant was in the basement at the time. Engine 94 backup went on air and got to the vestibule area, so the entryway to the basement and where the stairs are. The Engine 94 nozzleman, firefighter plumber, was moving towards the basement. Engine 94 backup had to go outside to get the gated Y and straighten up the hose line. Engine 94 backup went back to the vestibule. Engine 94 backup had re-entered the front door when conditions changed. Due to the amount of smoke, he had to crawl to the vestibule to locate the hose line, so it got dramatically worse all of a sudden. He saw fire in the basement and opened the nozzle and flowed water for 1 or 2 minutes into the basement from the vestibule area. He took the nozzle and moved outside to hit fire from the exterior through the basement windows on side Delta. So he went right, because the doorway was kind of Delta side of the Alpha side, Delta corner. So it was close to go to the Delta side and flow through the windows. And this is where nozzle, the firefighter plumber wasn't there all of a sudden at the nozzle, right? He didn't know where he was.
Well, yeah, I wondered about that, or maybe it's the second nozzle, second line off the leader. I don't know. Like, why did the backup man have the nozzle, and the nozzle man who went to the basement didn't have the nozzle? Like, yeah.
And it doesn't say in the report, so I don't know.
Yeah, kind of important to have a nozzle with you when you're going into a fire department. Prior to Engine 94's backup man coming back to the hose line, the Engine 94 lieutenant had to leave the basement due to the heavy fire and smoke. He came out of the basement and met command in the front yard. No indication that he met firefighter plumber when he was coming out. Anyway, at 02:13 hours, Battalion 7 and Truck 57 were then designated as RIT. So that would have been 6 guys. So at 02:13 hours, the driver of Truck 58 had the aerial to the roof, and there was a firefighter from Truck 58 assigned to ventilate the roof. The captain and a firefighter from Truck 53 then went to the basement for a search and rescue, and they went there at approximately 02:14 hours. At approximately 02:15 hours, Truck 58 found a female victim in the kitchen area, which is near the rear on the Bravo side, close to that rear door we talked about, but in the basement apartment. So Truck 58 started to move that. So at approximately 02:15 hours, Truck 58 found a female victim in the kitchen area. So the kitchen area is in the basement, and it would be on the Bravo side, but near that rear door, so towards the back. Truck 58 started to move the female victim to the backyard, so through that Charlie Bravo corner door. And they requested an ambulance to respond through the alley to access the patient. So there are these narrow gangways, 5 or 6 feet wide, separated each of these buildings, and they're like walkways to the backyard. So they requested an ambulance to respond through that alley. There's also a service alley across the back of all the buildings, so maybe through the back of there, whichever. Anyway, at 02:15, 52 hours, so almost 02:16 hours, Command then advised dispatch that the structure was a 2-story ordinary with fire in the basement, ordinary construction, right? So basically brick exterior, combustible interior. At approximately 02:16 hours, there is a fire showing from the basement windows on the side Alpha, side Bravo, and side Delta. So the basement's lit up. It's burning. So truck 53 then left the basement through that rear door due to the heavy fire into the basement. So they would have been able to do that, because the wind is pushing in through that door, and it's pushing the fire towards the Alpha side of the building in the basement and towards the open exit on the Alpha side. So that's the reason they chose to come and go through that rear basement on the Charlie Bravo corner, because they could do so because of the wind. Anyway, the captain from truck 58, went to the rear entrance, so down the Bravo side, to ensure that truck 53 was out of the basement. And based on the data log from the SCBA that was worn by the engine 94 nozzle firefighter, in other words, firefighter plumber, his air was then free flowing. So at 02:16 hours, their SCBA monitoring system noted that he was free flowing air.
Which they probably didn't see till after, when they were investigating what happened.
Yeah, so nobody monitoring. It's great to have these systems, but if you're not monitoring, what's the point?
They didn't have field technicians, I don't think. Chicago doesn't have drivers. At this point, no one on the fire ground knew the location of 94 nozzle. There were 2 firefighters from truck 58, and the driver of truck 53 were venting the roof. The members of truck 58 cut a hole in the roof on the side Bravo, and the driver of truck 53 cut a ventilation hole over the stairwell. It is unknown the size of the ventilation holes that were cut. The status of all companies at approximately 2:16 hours was: Battalion 8 was in command on Alpha side. Engine 94 was on the front door vestibule, Alpha side. Engine 7 was stretching a backup hose line on Alpha side. Truck 58 was in the basement with a par of 3. Truck 58 was also ventilating the roof, par 2, and Truck 53 was going to the basement, par 2, operating on the staff variants. Truck 53 was ventilating the roof, and Truck 53 was also laddering the building on the Alpha side. More resources were responding, such as Battalion 7, Truck 57, and a couple of ambulances. So we got to introduce our guest here, because we've got another host that's going to join us maybe more in the future, but I can see that he wants to say something. He's just sitting there nodding and agreeing with us and stuff. So please welcome a new co-host. It's retired Fire Chief Ron Robinson from the city of Medicine Hat here in Alberta. Ron and I have taught together quite a few times and shared experiences, and we share a lot of after-action review reports and discussions, and he's been wanting to join the podcast for a while, and all the stars finally lined up here this afternoon. So welcome on the podcast, Ron, and feel free. We just kind of switch back between, but you can chime in your comments when you want to or whatever. Just let me know. So, okay, Ron, now that we got your issues going, hello, and how are you? Welcome to the podcast.
It's good to be with you guys. And the more I start to become familiar with the script, the more it resonates with me in so many instances where ventilation is absolutely key to success, but the right hand has to know what the left hand's doing. Right. And I see some freelancing going on here as well, which is a real concern.
Control of ventilation. No, that's good. That's why we do these, right? Denny and I sit here week after week, and Doug and Dirk and even Dennis Jones has participated too. We sit here and we read these scripts and we go like, we got to tell people about these. People need to know about it. And just sitting there and reading the line of duty death report is kind of maybe not as easy to do versus the podcast, which is why we do it. Okay. Well, we'll continue on. So at about 2:17, so it's a minute later, engine 94 nozzle called Mayday. So that's firefighter plumber called a Mayday on the fireground tactical channel. And at 2:17:32 hours, command called Maine to provide an update for the box number. Command advised Maine that engine 94 had one line in service. Members of truck 58 and 53 were venting the roof. The officer and the firefighters requested an ambulance to meet truck 58 in the alley, and truck 58 was removing a victim from the basement. At approximately 2:18 hours, engine 94's nozzle, the nozzle men, firefighter plumbers, SCBA was empty. This came from the recording after the fact. They didn't know this because right now, no one knows that there's been a Mayday.
It's important to see the timelines here to understand that command is not on the tactical channel. They're on the command channel talking to dispatch.
As Battalion 7 and Squad 2 arrived on scene at 2:18, Battalion 7 heard the Mayday. He'd switched to the tactical channel, or he had his radio scanning or something like that. Mayday, Mayday, Mayday.
Well, he's listening as he's coming in, right?
Right, yeah. While he was still in his vehicle at the fireground channel, he asked the officer of Squad 2 if he had heard the Mayday. Battalion 7 then called command, but he was on the dispatch channel, as you just said. Battalion 7 switched from the fireground tactical channel to an advised command on the command channel. There was a Mayday transmitted, but no lunar, no location, unit assigned, name, assistance needed, and resources needed in the message. So very important. If you can get that lunar out, you need to, because people want to know who needs help. At approximately 2:19 hours, engine 94 nozzleman's firefighter plumber's pass alarm was manually activated from the data later they pulled out of it after the incident. At 2:19 hours, Battalion 7 met with command at the front yard. Battalion 7 suggested command that he conduct a PAR, escalate the incident to a second alarm, and request another RIT company, a truck company. Command ordered evacuation of the building on the fireground TAC channel due to heavy fire in the basement. The wind was blowing into the basement on the Charlie side, which created a flow path through the apartment. The exhaust portion was the front door, side alpha. Also, the windows in the basement started to fail, which increased ventilation for the fire. At 2:19:21, the captain of Truck 58 went to the door on the corner side of Bravo Charlie to make sure the Truck 53 crew was out of the basement. Engine 7 and Engine 94 attacked the fire in the basement with the 2-inch and 3/4 hose lines from the outside, using basement windows on the Alpha side, on the Alpha and Bravo side.
So within 7 minutes of arrival, and the first size up, the lieutenant goes to the basement, sees a small fire on the cushions on the couch. And within 7 minutes, by opening the rear door, you've gone from smoldering cushion on the couch, smoldering, no open fire, to fire out the windows on 3 sides.
Crazy. But we live in this world of solidified gasoline, right? And so as soon as it gets the air, it's going to go. And you could have put it out with a can probably, but they never got to it with water before that door opened. Although there was victims inside, so it's good to get the victims out. So you can't fault them for doing that, but they didn't control the flow path, and it made it a lot worse.
So where are we? Yeah, 02:19:30 hours. Dispatch acknowledged the Mayday on the dispatch channel. So this is the Mayday was at 17, and it's acknowledged at 30. So 13 minutes later before it's acknowledged. And so they acknowledged the Mayday on the dispatch channel. At 02:20 hours, Truck 58 had moved the first victim to the side Alpha, so out of the building, so around the side. Truck 58 and Engine 7 then started patient care on that female victim, the first victim removed. Ambulance 7 was assigned to patient care and was then transport unit for that female victim. At 02:20 hours, Truck 57 arrived on scene. At this time, 2 firefighters from Truck 58, 2 firefighters from Squad 2, and 1 firefighter from Truck 53, so 5 in all, were up venting the roof. Also, 3 firefighters from Squad 2 had then entered the basement. They then found another civilian who was a second victim, was a male, and began to remove that victim outside using the doorway on the Bravo Charlie side. So they went into the basement, found a victim, and started to extract them. So at 02:21 hours, 49, almost 02:22 hours, command advised Maine that they didn't have a Mayday at 11 at the box, that they weren't aware of a Mayday. Command was in the process of conducting a PAR. So I guess the question for Battalion 7 was, have you got a Mayday? Triggered command to do a PAR. And so that's where they were at the moment. They hadn't confirmed anything. So at approximately 02:22 hours, command asked the captain of Truck 58 if he'd heard a Mayday. The captain stated that he'd heard radio traffic about a Mayday. So Engine 94 backup advised command that Engine 94 nozzle man, firefighter plumber, was missing. And so at that point was advised. Engine 94 advised that they had a firefighter missing. So they couldn't do a PAR. So at approximately 02:23 hours, command then initiated RIT, which was Truck 57 and, remember, Battalion 7, I believe. Command also assigned Battalion 7, Squad 2, and Snorkel 2 to the Charlie side with Truck 57 to search the basement for the Engine 94 nozzleman, firefighter plumber. The captain and a firefighter assigned to the search from Truck 53 went to the first floor apartment to initiate a search for Engine 94. So a bunch of them went to the basement. He went to the first floor. At 02:24 hours, command advised dispatch that there was a Mayday at box 111-329. And at 02:24 hours, Maine dispatched a second alarm for the box. The following resources were then dispatched, which was Deputy 2, Engine 125, Engine 68, Tower Ladder 123, 454, which is another support vehicle, Battalion 11, Battalion 10, and the Office of the Investigator. So the members of Squad 2 got that second victim, who was a male, out of the building and around to the side Alpha as Truck 53 was entering the building to search the first floor apartment for Engine 94 nozzle man, firefighter, plumber. The time at that was about 02:24 hours.
The captain of Truck 53 was searching the first floor apartment with a firefighter from Truck 53 who was conducting a right-handed search. So this is the first floor now. A right-handed search in the apartment. They brought a RIT packed into the first floor apartment. At this point, there was heavy smoke and moderate heat in the first floor from that fire that's rocking and rolling underneath them, right? Nothing was showing on the captain's thermal imager. The captain approached the middle of the apartment and heard a pass alarm sounding. The captain found Engine 94 nozzleman, firefighter plumber, face down near the dining room table. So somehow firefighter 94 didn't go to the basement, went to the first floor.
So he's about halfway back, roughly 25 feet in from the entrance.
Yeah, but they were supposed to go to the basement.
He's about the middle.
They were supposed to go to the basement.
He's supposed to have gone down the stairs to the basement.
Right.
But he didn't.
He didn't, which is okay.
Which is why the lieutenant never saw him as he came in.
That's right. And the backup firefighter found the nozzle because he never made it in.
Right. All of that.
The captain found nozzleman on Engine 94, firefighter plumber, face down near the dining room table. The SCBA low air alarm was not sounding. Only the pass alarm was sounding. His face piece was partially off his face. His eyes were closed. He was not breathing. The captain called command, indicating he'd located Engine 94 nozzleman, firefighter plumber, in the first floor apartment at approximately 2:25 hours. So 10 minutes after he'd gone missing, and they didn't even know he was missing until 5 minutes ago. While two members of Squad 2 and Engine 94 hydrant were in the basement searching for Engine 94 nozzleman, they found a third civilian, male, near the bedroom by the stairs going to the front door. These firefighters...
So right near the fire.
Yeah. And near the exit, the chimney.
Yeah.
These firefighters were preparing to get the victim out of the basement using webbing. The captain called for a firefighter from Truck 57 to help him get Engine 94 nozzleman out of the apartment. Members of Truck 57 and Battalion 7 entered the apartment from the stairs on the Charlie side. Again, with the wind at their back. They were going in at the back, which potentially they should have done right from the start, is go in with the wind at your back. If it's a windy day, don't go in against the wind because you're in the chimney.
But it's an indication of how bad this fire was that nobody's going in the near door, the Alpha door.
Yeah.
Because there's too much smoke, flame, and heat coming out of there. They're going all the way to the back of the building and going in that door.
Too much fuel.
And all the hose stretch and everything that goes with that.
It's
3 lengths of hose just to get to that back door.
Yeah. The member from Squad 2 entered the first floor apartment, asked Battalion 7 where the downed firefighter was located. Firefighter from Squad 2 got the RIT pack and placed it by Engine 94's legs. With the help of Truck 57, Battalion 7, and a member from Squad 2, Engine 94 nozzleman, firefighter plumber, was removed from the first floor apartment to the stairs on the Alpha side. He was moved down the stairs and outside head first. Engine 94 nozzleman, firefighter plumber, was out of the building and in the front yard at 2:27 hours. So 20 minutes after he'd gone down. As Engine 94 nozzleman was being removed from the building, Squad 2 and Engine 94 hydrant found a third victim in the basement near the front bedroom. That was the one we just mentioned, Alpha side stairs. The third victim was removed by the Alpha side stairs, and they must be having a control on the fire now. They were able to get out the stairway. Engine 94 was already in the front yard as the third victim was removed from the building and coming up the stairs out the front door. The time was about 2:28 hours.
Actually, that's only 10 minutes after Plummer declared his Mayday.
Because it was 2:16, right?
Yeah. Yeah, 2:17 he declared his Mayday. 2:16 the computer said he's free flowing air.
Right.
Which they find out afterwards, of course.
Yeah. At 2:28, engine 94 Nozzleman, firefighter plumber, was on a stretcher and his SCBA internal gear were removed. ALS patient care was started by firefighters and paramedics from ambulance 52, and he was transported to local hospital at 2:32 hours. Was transferred to University Medical Center within the next 24 hours, and he unfortunately tragically died from his injuries on December 21st, so 5 days later. Command advised Maine 2:28 the fire was knocked down, and the fire was declared under control at 2:49 hours.
So fire behavior. So it was a considered opinion of the investigating fire marshal, so that would be from the department, that this fire incident was caused by an open flame ignition of fabric on the couch. The fire then spread to adjacent combustibles in the basement living room. Although that's not what was discovered on arrival, right? They discovered that the fire was in the couch and was smoldering. Anyway, I was determined that there was a careless use, misuse, or discarding of smoking materials was deemed to be a factor. The investigating fire marshal classified this event as incendiary due to human action causing the fire. So the cause of death officially afterwards, as reported by their postmortem examination by the Office of the Medical Examiner, was that firefighter plumber had died due to complications of carbon monoxide toxicity and thermal injuries due to the inhalation of smoke and soot during the apartment fire. It doesn't mention anything here about hydrogen cyanide poisoning, but I know that more than 10 years ago, there had been significant studies that hydrogen cyanide was probably more detrimental when breathing combustion products than was carbon monoxide, specifically because it severely suppresses your muscle and auto systems, so you will stop breathing, and also you don't make good decisions either. So
yeah, you're right. They don't mention that. Interesting.
So hydrogen cyanide, and I know that we started carrying hydrogen cyanide antidote kits
yes.
on ambulances and made sure that they came to our scenes. And I've been retired 10 years. It was probably 4 or 5 years before that.
Yeah.
9 years, sorry, not quite 10. So
I was
Ron's 10. I'm not.
I was trying to get them for Clearwater. They'd done some training on them up at Lakeland, and I thought that's a great idea. And trying to get, we actually bought detectors, hydrogen cyanide detectors, to have at every fire. And then I was trying to get the kits, and many cities bought them. Actually, there's a show on PBS called Royal Doctor Flying Service. It's in Australia, and they actually, one episode that we just watched a day or two ago had a fire, and they actually eventually figured out that it wasn't carbon monoxide, it was cyanide poisoning, and therefore they issued the antidote, and both one of the rescuers and the victim that was in the fire recovered in the TV show anyway by using this cyanide. So the Australian Fire Service must regularly carry the cyanide antidote kits.
Yeah. So they discovered this because they had firefighters and civilian victims who were not recording high levels of carboxyhemoglobin,
right?
In other words, carbon monoxide, but yet were behaving like they did. And further investigation had shown elevated levels of hydrogen cyanide in the blood. And so, like I said, we got these kits, but the reason we didn't stock them was because they don't have a long lifespan.
Yeah.
And they're expensive. So it made more sense to put them on the ambulances where they would be responding to multiple incidents across various communities, fire departments, and getting them funded and putting them there made more sense than carrying them on the fire trucks.
And the cyanide comes, the cyanide's coming from the products of combustion, our solidified gasoline, right?
Yeah. So, but remember that incident we did there about the wildland firefighter?
Yes.
Who he was a mutual aid guy, and they collapsed in the backyard on a burnover on the hill in it's Colorado,
California,
Wyoming, somewhere out there.
California.
And maybe it was. And he did not have extremely high levels of carbon monoxide where other people did, right? And he was behaving oddly, and it might have been, hydrogen cyanide. Who knows, right?
Might have been, although it was mainly wildland fire, so it wasn't man-made materials that was affecting him. It was a brush pile. That was episode 83. Yeah. Only 3 episodes ago, Denny.
But hydrogen cyanide, that's HCN, right?
Yeah, so HCN.
That's hydrogen, nitrogen,
cyanide.
HCN and nitrogen, right? And carbon, right?
Yeah.
So you got those present in any fire.
Yeah, that's true.
It's not an exotic material.
So let's see what happened here. Really? Why? What happened? He went to the second floor. There was no burning active fire there, but yet he was found on the floor. We've already led to it a little bit with some of the after action things that happened. The NIOSH investigators inspected and photographed the structural firefighting gear and SCBA worn by firefighter Plummer at the department's breathing apparatus service facility. At the time of the fire, the firefighter was wearing full PPE turnout gear and SCBA with a face piece. All the PPE was compliant, NFPA 1971, and for turnout gear and PPE, his turnout pants were cut during patient care, but that's fine. I mean, they were all compliant. The SCBA that was worn by Engine 94 nozzleman, firefighter Plummer, was a MSA G1. It was a fairly current model. It was approved by NIOSH and certified to meet the 2013 edition of NFPA 1981 for SCBA. The visual inspection revealed that the SCBA worn by Engine 94 nozzleman firefighter Plummer had a hole in the low-pressure hose during the incident. This issue with the SCBA was investigated by the department's breathing apparatus service department on December 16th of 2021, and the fire department safety officer, MSA, issued a user notice on February 3rd of 2022 in response to issues at this incident. The user notice was for an MSA G1 regulator hose inspection. The data log from the SCBA was interesting to read. At 2:12 hours, the firefighter Plummer turned his SCBA on. It had 4190 psi. At 2013 hours, he was on air with 4210 psi, so a little bit of variance there. At 2:17, so 5 minutes later, he's got his low air warning activated at 2250 psi. So 30% left, right? At 2:17 and 15 seconds, the emergency low air alarm went on, notifying him that he had 33% left in the cylinder, 1500 psi. At 2018 hour, the cylinder read 0. At 1900 hours, so 5 minutes later, he manually activated his pass alarm. At 2031, the pass alarm was silenced and the SCBA was turned off. Here's an excerpt from the MSA notice. MSA advising all customers to inspect their G1 second stage regulator. So this is the low pressure hose from your regulator that's on the backpack, on your back beside the cylinder, to the mask mounted regulator, the low pressure hose. So it gets a lot of abuse, a lot of movement and banging and hanging around. Remove from service any G1 SCBA after the notice says, while the SCBA is pressurized during daily and after each use visual inspections, examine that hose for leaks. They remove from service any second stage regulator hoses that exhibit bulging, deterioration, dirty O-ring, seals, cracks, debris, tears, holes, stickiness, signs of heat or chemical related damage or other visible signs of damage. So, I mean, they obviously found a problem here.
Yeah, we used to inspect the BA. You do a quick visual. You turn the air on. You look at the gauge, the remote gauge. Is the gauge reading properly? You turn it off. You bleed it down. You want to hear the bell or the whistle come on or something. That's kind of the extent of it, right?
Yep. And
it's not good enough.
And he had inspected his that day at the start of the shift. He had turned it on and checked it because the log showed that it was done. The problem was it wasn't long enough to detect a leak.
Yeah, and there might not have been a leak without manipulating it, right? Well, and, you take the hose, you manipulate it, you may find a connection leaks when you manipulate it as opposed to just the way it happens to be sitting when you test it.
Yeah, exactly.
And it always drives me crazy to see videos of firefighters walking around with their mask plugged into the end of the regulator and it's dangling 4 feet down, getting caught in doors, getting smacked, dragging on the ground, wherever the case may be. Why would you do that?
Absolutely.
This is your lifeline. You have to take care of it.
Yeah, you either clip the mask harness onto a clip to keep it out of the way, or you just take the hose and mask and put it around your neck. It's neatly out of the way. Do something. You get it jammed in a door, anything like that can cause damage, and you may not know it until later.
Yeah, and this hose could have got pinched somewhere at some point, when it was mounted in the truck or whatever, or just worn through, eventually got a hole in it. So it's something, I mean, it's not expected. Like all of a sudden you've got no air. And of course, it's not like the old elephant truck SCBA that you could, stuff the hose in your pocket. This guy, all of a sudden, he's sucking air. So what did he do? He took his mask off, right? which is normal. He's got nothing left. You're going to take your mask off. But then if you couldn't get out right away,
And he wouldn't have known where that rear door was.
no, he just came in the front up the stairs. Yep, and he knew it was smoky
He was
there.
his job on arrival was the lieutenant went in, did the size up, came out and said, "Pull a line."
Yeah,
So he went around the back of the truck, hauled this big leader line off, flaked it out, went with the nozzle to the front door, and went in. So that was his knowledge of the building.
so the recommendations here, recommendation 1, ensure all incident commanders conduct a scene size up and a risk assessment, develop strategy and incident action plan, establish divisions groups early at an incident, use functional personnel accountability systems, maintain tactical worksheet, incorporate the principles of command safety, are provided with an incident command technician or an emergency incident technician, right, which he didn't have, and appoint a safety officer. In the discussion about that recommendation, the lieutenant from Engine 94, firefighter plumber, went into the basement twice. Oh, no, this is the lieutenant. Went into the basement twice and never communicated the conditions or a risk assessment to command. Also, companies going into the basement via the Charlie side did not provide a scene size up or a risk assessment. Command never communicated a strategy or incident action plan and did not have an accountability officer or an incident command technician to support the command function. Command encountered crews finding 3 civilians in a basement and Engine 94 nozzleman being lost and unaccounted for. A safety officer was not dispatched until the second alarm was transmitted.
So command must have known that they had 2 points of entry into this building. You would think they must have known that, but never made the connection with the wind-driven fire issue.
Yep.
Clearly didn't.
Yeah, but it's hard to get firefighters to go online and take that ULFSRI training and all those videos and stuff. Every time I instruct, I write those on the board and I post them and I said, here's free online training. But it's often hard, especially in a career department, to get the firefighters and the officers to take modern fire behavior training.
Yeah. So I have to assume that their actions on this were typical of how they handled fires in these buildings.
We do it the same way every time. We always go in the front door. It's that's the problem, right?
And the back door, apparently.
And the back door with the front door open. And what do? You get a flow path. The same thing happened in San Francisco.
Not always.
The same thing happened in Boston. The same thing happened in San Francisco. The same thing happened in so many of these fires, right?
We're doing our armchair coaching here.
We are, yeah.
But we were talking about this before. They actually found 3 victims in this building.
Yeah.
1 deceased and 2 others that needed immediate medical care.
So they had to go in.
It was a pretty busy little fire ground.
They had to go in. They had to rescue the people, which was all great. And and this guy would have been fine, except for his SCBA failed. I mean, it indicated all these other issues with the call, and they didn't know he was missing. That was a command problem. But the SCBA problem, which actually killed the firefighter, isn't responsible because the commanders didn't know where he was, what he was doing, who was doing what on scene.
But a big assumption that he was going to be okay if it wasn't for his SCBA.
Right.
He was in the building, not where he was supposed to be. He was in the building
alone,
on a different floor from where he was supposed to be. He was in the building on fire without a nozzle.
Alone.
By himself. Alone.
Mm-hmm.
His officer wasn't with him, didn't know where he was, and he's a 1-year firefighter.
Right. Yeah. Officer should have had him by the shirt tail.
Yeah. Unreal.
They had a rope between them.
There you go. We used to when I was in Dalmeny, Saskatchewan. When I was in Dalmeny, Saskatchewan in 1986 to 92, we each carried a short rope with 2 loops on it, about 6 feet long. I made them myself because I spliced them because I knew how to splice rope because of our history with sailboats, Denis. And I made these little ropes up, and everybody carried them in their pocket. And you would put one on your wrist and your partner would put one on your wrist. And that way we could search a little further. And that's how it was done in 1986 in Saskatchewan.
I thought that was to keep your mittens.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks. You didn't have those ropes in Nova Scotia.
I remember being at a fire one time. It was a big steel building, and it was a woodworking facility, and it was rocking and rolling. And we had to take a crew inside. They were doing ventilation, doing all kinds of stuff on the outside, and we were going to take a crew and try to get a knock on it. And the two guys that I had to take in with me were pretty junior, hadn't had a lot of firefighting experience. And so we took two of them in on the nozzle, and I was the officer with them. And I had one on either side, and I had my hands wrapped through their SCBA straps, and I held them because either they were going to rabbit out on me or they were going to wander off, and I wasn't having either of that. So,
Thoroughbreds.
and it got actually pretty nasty in there.
Any comments, Ron? Jump in.
Well, yeah, this is the problem with young firefighters, that they're not aware and how to self-evaluate, troubleshoot on the fly. If your SCBA starts to go into alarm prematurely, this is not something we actually train on. We don't train to failure. So we go in with what our norms are, quite frankly, and that becomes problematic. So, firefighter plumber losing that air pressure and not knowing how to communicate that out. So this is something that we actually need to train better. We need to do those labyrinth that force with a blackout mask that actually runs out of air prematurely before you do that left wall, before you complete that that assessment. This is one of the things that we don't do enough of. Quite frankly, I've been there myself as a young firefighter. I've gone in, I've run out of air, had no light. The 500 watt illumination suddenly blew, and I had no idea where I was because I lost continuity with that wall. So I had to calm myself down, even though my alarm was going off, continue my left wall so that I finally found the stairs and climbed up the stairs. And I was holding my breath by the time I got out. So those are the kinds of things instinctively and intuitively we do, but that could have been my last day on the fire service.
This is the NFPA or IAFF Mayday training, right? And with the firefighter survival training, the fellow in Winnipeg where the two firefighters died and the two firefighters bailed out the window, and he talks about it. He's been at several fire chiefs conference. I can't pull a name off the top of my head right now. We've invited him to join us here, but he hasn't. But anyway, but he couldn't get through the window. He'd pushed his captain or his other firefighter through the window onto the deck below from the second floor, and he was trying to get out, and he couldn't get out, and he recounts in his story, he says, but then I remembered what I learned in firefighter survival, and it said, loosen your SCBA straps so you can get your head and your tank in the same hole. And he did that, and he was able to fall out the window, and he has gone back to work. What the heck's his name? I can't remember. But anyway, I apologize. But this is the training this fellow didn't draw on for whatever reason. Now, Command owned a bunch of it too, right? Because you can't have equipment failures. That's the whole problem with a tick-led search, is what do you do when the tick doesn't work, right?
Yep. So it's like Ron's saying, you got to have confidence, and you've got to have confidence in your equipment, and that the equipment is reliable and appropriate. You got to have confidence in your own personal knowledge and skills. You've got to be extremely confident in that, and you've got to have confidence in your teammates, right? Yeah. So that if your equipment fails for whatever reason, or your knowledge and skills fail for whatever reason, because maybe it's a situation that you hadn't anticipated and mentally prepared for, that you can count on your teammates. And if you're too new on the job, you haven't really got that slide deck of all the different things in your head. Oh, I've done this before, I know what to do now. Or you haven't adequately trained, although this guy had almost 1,000 hours of training. But remember, we just did that last episode, which was British firefighters, and they stopped training on SCBA for 2 years because fire behavior was more important. They didn't have time to do it all, and he was alone, this guy.
Yeah.
So
if
his partner nobody there to bail him out.
If his partner would have been with him, it would have been, hey, I'm out of air, got to go, call an emergency, Mayday, and let's get out of here, right? But he was alone.
I'll focus on getting the last bit of air out of my pack, and you grab a hold of me and get me out of here.
Yeah, exactly.
So it was like a triple failure here.
Mm-hmm. Recommendation.
Well, and what do you do when you're drowning? Two gulps, and you're fighting for survival. At which point in time, unless you have that backup, you're not going anywhere. And so clearly, firefighter plumber, he had no one there to support egress whatsoever in that incredible, in those very few seconds, because once he was overcome, he just continued to breathe in that unburned particulate. And as we all know, that he drowned, he suffocated. What a horrible way to go.
And who the hell was monitoring why would you have these SCBA monitoring systems that tell you everything that's going on with your firefighter
if you don't,
it's just sitting in the truck
you don't
doing
have
its thing by
anybody,
itself?
no one to do it. Yep, no technician.
Are you saving? Yeah, you saving that for the medical examiner? Is that the reason you have that?
We had them in Fort Saskatchewan, but the pump operators were trained to monitor it because we didn't have that extra person. But
I really dislike those systems. I've never supported them because I don't think they're any good at all compared to a guy who's doing entry control. He's way better.
That's the British
100%.
way.
Yep.
Doesn't work in Britain either, Denny.
Yeah.
Well, if he's not assigned, there ain't there. Yeah.
But if when we talk about this, Denny, when you and I instruct ICS, all hazard safety officer, that's one of the things a safety officer must do, and assistants must be monitoring that SCBA and any call for Mayday.
He wasn't there yet.
Absolutely. There was none assigned. So if none is assigned, who is a safety officer?
Yep.
Incident command.
Overload.
Recommendation 2. And so many of these recur, which is, I know, we keep killing firefighters the same way. Ensure all companies operating on the fireground maintain crew integrity, operating based on assessment given by the IC. Critical incident benchmarks are communicated to the IC. Inspect and check their assigned SCBA at the beginning of each shift and after each use. Now, when I was in Germany, it was really interesting. I was in Karlsruhe visiting the Rosenbauer Metz plant, and we went to the fire station. And if I understand correctly, and there could be in translation I got it wrong, but it looked like they had SCBA technicians in the station that worked there all the time. They were firefighters, but they also were SCBA qualified to do flow tests. And anytime they used an SCBA at a scene, it came back and it went to the technicians for a flow test and a cleaning. And the new SCBA were sitting on racks in the station. They had the SCBA in the trucks, and they had a whole set sitting on a rack in the station. And I asked, what's this about? And he said, well, anytime we use an SCBA, we take it off. It goes back to the shop to get flow tested, like we do once a year. And then they would take a new one that had been flow tested and put it on the truck until it gets used again. And then if it gets used, it goes back and the technician flow tests it. In North America, we do it once a year if you're lucky. In Germany, in Karlsruhe anyway, they did it anytime the BA was used. Now, if that was the practice in Chicago, it probably would have been caught because that hose would have been seen for an inspection and might have caught it. But we don't do that here. And when Draeger bought a bunch of SCBAs to North America, and they had a big lawsuit with several fire departments down in like Loudoun County or somewhere like that because they were failing. The SCBAs aren't working right and they're failing. And Draeger's answer was, you're not maintaining them enough. They need to be maintained better. And the thing that we're bad at in North America is maintaining stuff. Now, I know Ron, he changes the oil in his Subaru like they tell him to, but I might not because I'm a cowboy, right? And it's like, yeah, 10,000 is good enough, whatever. It's just oil. It's the attitude, and it's the same. That's why we have all these problems with Brontos and T-Rexes and stuff, in that we're not used to the maintenance that Europe is used to doing, or Japan.
Yeah. When I was in industry, we replaced our SCBAs and we bought Draegers.
Yep.
And I had been previously used to Scots, and I mean all the way back to the Scott ones.
Industries all
I could tell you a story.
Yeah.
Yeah, municipal. And when I got to industry and we bought Draegers, I became a trained Draeger tech. I was also the lead instructor and responsible for training for the fire brigade, stuff like that, in the nuclear industry that I was in. And I couldn't believe the maintenance and inspection routine for the Draegers. It was, I looked at it and says, what? We got to do a thorough, complete inspection quarterly, I think it was. It was some crazy thing. I went, what? You don't do that. You don't have to do that. I mean, that was kind of my thoughts because it was like nothing I'd ever seen. And can you imagine, though, the logistics of every time you go to a fire, for 60-some stations running, how many calls a year did they say? 600,000 calls a year?
900,000.
whatever, how many fires that represents and pulling. I mean, you'd have a guy, all he did all day long was drive around with air packs, multiples, and you'd have
in
trucks
car
with
in
packs out of service. And like logistically, it seems something you're not going to want to do.
But in Carr's rule,
Mhm.
the fire, it was 200,000 people or something in the city. They had 2 full-time stations, and the rest were retained or part-time on call. And in the full-time station, there was a guy or two that was their only job was SCBA and breathing air, and they took care
Yeah.
of it. And then they had other guys that just did other jobs. But in order to be a firefighter in Germany in Carr's rule, they told me, if I got it right, you had to have a trade first before you could be a firefighter. You had to be a plumber,
Mhm.
electrician, an engineer, a technician of some sort, instrumentation tech, whatever, to be able to apply to be a firefighter. Now, they didn't cook for themselves. Food was brought in, except on weekends, from the central city kitchen. All the meals came from the central city hall kitchen. They built their own furniture. They fixed all the stuff. They painted the building. They did all that themselves. But they also made sure they had good SCBAs on the truck every time they went out, because it's a life safety. It's
Yeah.
a high risk thing.
Yeah.
It's just
It's quite different, isn't it,
it's a
in
whole
Medicine
different
Hat,
mindset.
isn't it?
Well, Carswell had they had
Good
another
priority.
building behind the fire station. They had another building behind the fire station that was 2 floors. The main floor with the apparatus bays was all pods for disasters. And they had a flood pod, and they had a earthquake pod, and they had a wildfire pod, and they had a command pod, and a foam pod, and a crane. They also had a crane. Every time there was an MVC, the crane went out. And underneath on the bottom, the basement level, there was 2 full-time staff, and it was full of disaster supplies. That's all it was. And 2 full-time staff, all they did was
Wow.
maintain all the flood pumps and the sandbag machine and all this stuff. And then I came back to and I'd already doing disaster stuff, and I'm going like, it's a whole different game. But in Europe, look at Ukraine.
Mhm.
They already had places to shelter, right? Because they're prepared.
Yep.
We're not here.
We are woefully ill
We're getting
prepared,
off track.
and no, but so logistics play a role. So once you have those resources, you've got to look after them, and they've got to be prepared. That state of readiness, and at that highest possible level. Otherwise, we set ourselves up for failure.
Yeah. When it comes to daily inspections and personally checking your own personal safety gear, I think you need to be well trained, and you need to understand that that's an important thing, and it may be the most important thing you'll do that day. And when you use your pack for whatever reason, you need to check it again, because it's a whole new ball game.
Yep.
And when you close the door on the apparatus and the hose and mask get caught in the door, it should come out of service,
Right.
and be properly inspected. And that's probably what happened here.
Absolutely.
You look at the damage,
Right.
it looks like something like
Yeah.
that.
But if you did
So,
that here in a city here, and you said my air pack's out of service, is there another air pack you can grab? Maybe not. Maybe off a spare truck. Maybe.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
Maybe a bottle.
well, that may be the reality in some departments, but I sure as hell tried to avoid it being the reality in my department.
I was on
and
4 or 5.
and it's a question of priority. It's priority, man.
I was on
That's
4
right.
or 5
That's
fire
exactly right.
departments in North America here in my career, right? Little towns, bigger, bigger, bigger. Every one of them, when I said, we got to have our SCBA's flow tested every year, they looked at me like, what? We need to have our pump tested every year. We need to change our tires when they're 7 or 10 years old. They looked at me like I just had 2 heads. Like, why? So it's a North American mindset. Anyway, getting back to the podcast.
No, it's a leadership mindset that some chiefs and others have, not all.
Right. So, discussion.
That's true.
Well,
Yep. No, that's
part of
absolutely
crew
right.
integrity, the members of Engine 94 should have been with Engine 94 Nozzleman to get him out of the building when he started experiencing issues with his SCBA. That when the Mayday occurred and the civilians' victims were being found, there was no assignments given by command. Also, so no sectoring, no divisions, no groups, no span of control. Also, company officers did not communicate with command when benchmarks were being met or not met. All members need thoroughly inspect their SCBA at the beginning of each shift and after each use, like you just said, Denis.
So this sounds to me like it was
When was
complete
the RIT
freelancing.
team?
That's what it sounds like.
Exactly. Yep.
Huh?
Yeah. When was the RIT team
They
instituted?
weren't there
This
yet,
is what
I
I
don't
want to
think.
know.
No, RIT team was instituted at 0213. They were assigned. It was Truck 57 and Battalion 7.
Yep.
Yeah.
But they didn't hear the Mayday.
Command didn't hear the Mayday, so it didn't get called. Yep.
Well, Battalion 7 is the one that questioned whether there was a Mayday.
But even after he questioned it, nothing happened because that was at the same time.
Right. No, that's right.
That's a cross your fingers, hope everything's okay.
And it wasn't.
Ensure fireground operations include SOP, SOG for adequate staffing, wind-impacted fires. That was the key here. Coordinating ventilation with suppression, review and revise SOPs, SOGs for below-grade fires. All firefighters and officers are trained in fireground survival procedures. So obviously they didn't think that happened.
Mm-hmm.
And members and dispatchers are trained for safety features of portable radios. At this incident, Truck 53 was operating on manning variants with only staffing of 4, which in many of the episodes we do, 4 is awesome because you don't have 4. But the wind was blowing against the fire building on the Charlie side. The open doors on the Bravo Charlie corner and the open door on the Alpha side created an unrestricted flow path from the basement to the first floor, allowing fire to spread in the basement. The fire in the basement was knocked down in the basement from the exterior. Ventilation occurred when the rear door was opened, creating the flow path. Each firefighter and fire officer was assigned a portable radio. Training procedures should have dictated how the best exit the hazard zone. Engine 94 nozzle transmitted a Mayday and then activated his pass, but he did not leave the building. The fireground tactical channel is a non-repeater channel with limited distance, not recorded. The fire alarm office cannot monitor the fireground tactical channels. If a transmission is missed, there's no ability to identify the portable radio, and the tactical channel is not taped for recall by fire alarm or dispatch.
Very common.
Yeah, and that's why, like Edmonton,
it's a problem.
Edmonton put repeaters in every truck. As soon as you pull a park brake, the first in engine, the repeater turns on. And then they're supposed to go to that channel, and that way they're heard on all the radio channels. Whether it actually works or not, I can't tell without Dirk or Doug here. But I remember when they bought when they changed to the new radio system in Alberta, they bought repeaters for every truck, and I went, I'll never be able to afford that in my little Fort Saskatchewan. I can't do it, right?
Yeah, but whether you can afford it, ask yourself.
I know.
Can you afford the consequences?
I know.
You know, the other thing we don't do is understand that when there's a metal roof and a repeater does not
or walls
work, to go to simplex, you got to go to simplex. So if you're not getting a feedback, or you have a repeater that because it's so hot out, it trips, the AC stops, it gets hot, but guess what? It doesn't default back to AC and doesn't cool the amp, and so you lose that repeater capability. And that's where you got to go to simplex. So those are the kinds of things we don't test for and don't train for.
If you're not doing adequate training on SCBA, Ron, are you doing adequate training on radio usage?
Comms is huge, absolutely huge.
One of the big 5.
Yeah.
Wind-impacted fire may be one of the most dangerous operations firefighters will encounter, and we've seen this so many times. The term wind-impacted fire is best used to describe a fire which the wind has potential to or is already causing a dramatic and sudden increase in fire, heat, and smoke. Adjusting tactics to account for wind conditions and structural firefighting is critical to enhance the safety and effectiveness of firefighters. Experienced fire officers and firefighters who have survived wind-impacted fires have described this. The following, FDNY 2013, this is from Vandalia Avenue fire, right, which was a wind-impacted multi-story building that killed several firefighters. Upon arrival, conditions appeared to be routine. Exactly. That's what happened here. It's a couch on fire in the basement. Nothing to it.
No big deal.
Within seconds, fire, heat, and smoke conditions changed without warning from routine to life-threatening. They opened the door. An operating 2.5-inch hose line flowing from the downwind position or into the exhaust portion of the flow has little or no effect on the incredible heat being produced. However, flowing water into the intake or inlet side of the flow path was shown to be very effective. A wind-impacted fire should be attacked from the windward side or alternate strategies, which was the basement windows. Members must identify and communicate conditions, ventilation profile that indicate wind-impacted fire conditions, and implement the correct attack strategy. Firefighters should not assume that wind-impacted fire conditions can be impacted head-on from a downwind position, regardless of the size and numbers of hand lines flowing. And they had that Bill, what was his, Mississauga fire chief? He's done many presentations on it. Bill Stewart. And he talked about a fire on a 26th floor of a building in Toronto that was wind impacted in a hoarding suite. And he said, if I remember right, they had like 2 mini monitors and a couple of 65s flowing into this apartment, and they had no effect. They actually had to go in through the wall of the next door apartment to knock the fire down because they you just couldn't flow enough water to downwind when the fuel is there, right?
Yeah, Bill Stewart's Toronto ex-retired
Toronto,
now.
right? Yeah,
Toronto. So, if the incident commander had been paying attention and knew what he was seeing standing on the A side, we're going in the back. They open the door. Suddenly there's fire and smoke coming out the front. Close the back door, guys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That would have solved a lot of issues right there.
Or close the front door and go in the back.
And we don't set up windsocks, which is another really important, very simple
dispatch
tool
will tell you
use.
which way the wind is when you're going to the call.
Good.
Sure.
Good heavens, when it's blowing 75 kilometers an hour, it's not that difficult to tell the direction.
Ron knows about wind. He's from Medicine Hat. Yeah.
I do.
Well, Chicago, the windy city. Yeah. When responding,
which way are the Gophers rolling?
Ouch. When responding to a reported structure fire, an overriding consideration concerning size-up should include wind conditions, just like you said, and the potential effect on the fire. The key to successfully operating at a wind-impacted fire in a structure depends on recognizing the seemingly routine fire may change to blowtorching fire when the fire is impacted by the wind. The impact of the wind will affect the size of the window openings, the fuel load, the stage of the fire, of when a window fails. When wind-impacted fire conditions exist in a structure, the incident commander should notify the dispatcher of this information so it can be relayed to all responding units. Also, IC should make an announcement on the tactical channel. Once the critical factors of an incident are identified, steps can be taken to minimize the hazards to the firefighters. FDNY 2013. This is not new information here.
Yeah. So I know there are people listening and going, well, the windows failed. So, it wasn't the open door. Well, the windows failed because the door had been opened.
Yes.
And the door caused a smoldering fire to become a full flaming fire that then took over the space, generated an enormous heat that caused the windows to fail. So the windows would not have failed from a smoldering cushion on a couch. Now, a smoldering cushion on a couch is extremely deadly, creates a lot of very toxic smoke, gases,
synthetics,
and can easily take out 3 people in the apartment, which it did. But it's not going to take the windows out.
So the big things that we
creating this massive flow path with all the heat caused the windows to go. And once the windows are gone, now you've got an open burning structure.
And everything's off gassing. So at the same time, we're going to have that simultaneous ignition. But there's something that I take a little bit of exception to, and that is this. So when we as officers are responding to an incident, I'm not talking to dispatch. I'm talking to the incoming units. I'm not talking to dispatch. Dispatch is listening in. So it's not they should notify the dispatcher. At the end of the day, we've got to be aware of who we're communicating with. And I want that roll order model. I want to hear back as to what it is that I've communicated. And so when somebody says, did anybody hear a Mayday? You stop all communications, verify whether that was a Mayday or not. You don't just keep on questioning, do we have a Mayday? So these kinds of things, and I know it's armchair quarterback stuff, but these are easily solved if we calmly address, if that's a Mayday, let's confirm it one way or the other.
This is the recurring themes on this podcast is command issues, span of control, staffing, which actually wasn't a problem on this call. They had lots of staffing on the scene, but it wasn't controlled. It wasn't managed, right? And then, of course,
but it wasn't assigned where it was needed.
And, of course, wind and basement fires, the next point in the NIOSH report. Recognizing below-grade fires is essential to developing proper strategy and tactical objectives. These fires are low frequency, high risk, right? There's that Gordon Graham again, low frequency, high risk.
There you go.
Low-grade fires may be difficult to initially detect, may be difficult to access, may require additional staffing for hose lines, operation, ventilation, and firefighters may be working over the fire. There is increased risk to firefighters due to limited entry and egress from the basement. Some basements have a cellar, which is only accessible through the basement. Unusual and unanticipated void spaces, working above the fire, weakened floor joists and flooring materials, being caught in the exhaust portion of the flow path, unknown and frequently excessive fire loading in the basement. That was that hardware store, the Father's Day fire in New York City, right? Restricted ventilation options, utility panels and meters and connections, separate areas connected by non-fire stopped utility penetrations, hanging wires and ductwork, furnitures and appliances, often disorganized distribution of the contents. Come look at my basement. The treadmill, the rowing machine, the bass guitar, the amplifier, the big old desk, everything. The plants for winter, they're all there.
Get rid of all of that, Paul. Go to an upright base.
Yeah. I got to get a little
I don't have a
base.
basement.
I need a little base. He doesn't have a basement.
So not to minimize the dangers of basement fires. They're absolutely, and cellar fires are worse because there's no windows.
Right.
But this was a split entry, 2.5 story, where you're talking 5 steps down to the basement, 5 steps up to the upper floor, if that. So even with a basement fire, you're going to have it's not all coming up like a chimney. You're going to have that split plane, right? Where it can exhaust much more easily. So getting in and out of this basement with a severe fire would have been a little bit easier than one that was fully below grade.
Right.
You could actually stand in the doorway here and fire water into the basement, except for the fact that it turned a corner, except for that fact, much more easily. So, and our fatality wasn't in the basement, by the way.
No, it wasn't. Yeah. And the 3 people were victims. Yeah. No.
But the point is it's extremely dangerous, and the fire was in the basement.
So getting to the good news portion of the podcast, actions taken since the incident.
Yes.
They've implemented a number of changes in fireground operations. Second radios for the ICs so they can monitor 2 channels at once without scanning. Safety officers for all working fires. The fire department's addressing issues that include communications, stationary command posts, right? Don't be walking around. Stay in your command post. The next episode we're going to do is going to be that one. Use of a tactical worksheet that complements the personnel accountability and crew integrity and continuous scene size up and risk assessment. Now, the OSHA investigation said the department had numerous written policies in place, including 2 and not limited to SOPs on risk assessment, Maydays, personnel, power reports, rapid intervention team, and basement fires. While it appears most operations during the fire were conducted according to procedures, certain procedures were not followed. The department SOP on basement fire says company officers must ensure that all members of their command are on the appropriate tactical channels. It appears that for the crew of Engine 1, must be Engine 94, this did not occur. The department SOP on structured risk management says members must enter together, stay together, and exit together. Obviously, for the crew of Engine 94, members entered separately and did not work in teams. The SOP on
as did other companies, by the way.
That's right. They were split up all over the place. That's why I like those helmet stickers with your engine number. And anytime I would see different engines working together, I'd go, hang on a minute, you're not with your company. That was one of the biggest problems with my smaller rural fire departments, is trying to keep the crews together for accountability. And no one would understand why I was so adamant about that. I even bought the things for the SCBAs that said what engine it was from. And that way I could look at it and say, hey, engine 2, why are you over there with engine 5?
But now I'm going to do my Doug impersonation.
Oh, here we go.
Says ladder companies, truck companies always split up. You put a couple of guys on the roof. Yeah, you got a guy who's doing forcible entry. You got 5 guys. Yeah, they're not all on the roof. They're not all doing forcible entry. Some go here, some go there. That's their job. And their job is to stay together virtually through radio communications or whatever the case may be. Engine companies are far more likely to stay together because their main job is to go inside and
Yeah.
fight the fire.
Need 2 or 3
Where ladder
guys.
companies tend to be more exterior, and squad or rescue companies can also be split up, and they tend to be go get the other guys who got into trouble.
All right, Doug. Good job, by the way.
That's absolutely
So
accurate.
the SOP on
Which part, the Doug part or
Yeah.
what I said?
Yeah, both.
SOP on structured risk management assessment states members must constantly monitor tactical communications for critical radio reports. It appears that some command officers, company officers, and firefighters on scene did not monitor communications for these critical radio reports. The department provided information about the SCBA the victim was wearing, requested by OSHA, and it revealed that the victim did encounter a significant SCBA emergency while operating at the fire. The department's daily after-use inspection log shows that the SCBA assigned was personally inspected by the victim at the start of his shift that morning. The victim recorded the SCBA was okay across 13 areas listed on the inspection sheet and noted the cylinder pressure at 4190 psi. This check is corroborated by the event log when it was turned on and system was charged, etc. The visual function inspection of that morning did not indicate any malfunctions with the SCBA. The rapid loss of air, of course, is one of the most serious SCBA emergencies a firefighter could encounter. Once this emergency occurred, the firefighter only had approximately 2 minutes to perform emergency procedures to establish another source of breathing air or to exit the structure before running out of air. It is highly unlikely the victim or any firefighter would have been able to address this type of SCBA emergency by performing some of the corrective procedures to the SCBA while inside. The OSHA could not.
So the 2 minutes they're quoting there, Paul, is not some type of industrial rule or some type of policy. It's the amount of time it took for his air pack to go flat.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's where the 2 minutes is coming from.
Yeah.
From the time the remote monitoring system, who nobody was looking at, noticed there was a problem until there was no air left. There was 2 minutes.
And you wouldn't notice it until the low pressure alarm went off. And you'd go, hey, what the hey? I just put this pack on. How come I got a low air alarm? And then you start looking at the gauge and the lights and you go, and by then you're done. Yeah.
Yeah. And he may not have actually noticed that it was going down, like you were just saying. Because, if you've got the purge valve turned on a Scott, for instance, and it's bleeding air, you can hear it. It's in the mask.
Right.
But if it's down on your chest somewhere,
it's gone.
You may not even notice.
Yeah,
no.
Exactly.
There should be an alarm
just for low air. That's it.
For sudden excessive use?
No.
But there isn't.
Absolutely. For sudden,
there isn't.
No, there's no. That's absolutely, and that's easily engineered in.
But such a rare occurrence.
Yeah, get onto an NFPA committee and change it.
Yeah.
There you go. That's what I need in my life.
Oh, I got you on a podcast. They couldn't determine
another $1,000 to selling. Another $1,000 on the selling price.
They're only. I don't know how much an SCBA is now. They used to be $6.
I don't know what they are. They must be pushing $10,000 by now.
$12,000. Yep. Let's see.
Well, if one radio is 12,
let's
P25. Yeah.
Let's see. OSHA couldn't determine what caused the tears. They do presume the tears did occur at about 2:16 a.m. Since the SCBA performed normally during inspection and during the incident, actually, it like for a couple of minutes, it worked normally. It went down fast, but not catastrophically. And then it went down completely fast in the last 3 minutes.
Yeah, it must have been like hanging on by a thread when he went in with it.
Indirect causes, OSHA says, based on evidence, the firefighters from the engine entering the interior were not checked to see that they were operating on the right fireground channel. Close supervision of the firefighter, who had only 6 months of field experience, was not provided by the company officer. Firefighters from the engine did not enter the structure together, stay together, and exit together. Firefighter 1 was not in direct or visual contact with another firefighter when he suffered the emergency. As a result, no firefighters were able to provide identity that firefighter was experiencing a life-threatening emergency and provide assistance. The firefighter had not established radio communication with a member outside the hazard zone. He was not able to receive immediate assistance after experiencing his life-threatening emergency. The SCBA emergency was so significant it is unlikely that he or any firefighter could have corrected the situation to restore the SCBA to normal operation inside the building. The engine company.
His only option was exit, right?
Yep. The engine company officer lost. He didn't know. The engine company officer didn't know where he was for about 10 minutes. So that's like unacceptable for an engine company officer to not know where your guy is for 10 minutes.
Totally.
Sorry to
Totally.
say it like armchair
Unreal.
quarterbacking, but it's how we need to get
Yeah,
better.
totally.
Remember, the
Yeah.
whole idea is to help you, our listeners,
Yeah.
to get better at your next call. Most fire,
But let's be fair to the officer here,
Yeah.
right? I mean, the officer is supposed to know where he's assigned his firefighter to be, and so therefore he knows where he is if he's not immediately with them, although he should be immediately with them, but maybe he stepped back 10 feet to free a coupling on a corner or something like that. Can happen. So he should know where his firefighter is.
Yep.
It's also the firefighter's responsibility to tell the officer where he is if he's not where he's supposed to be.
Yeah, I'm going up the first floor just because I thought I heard something or something. Who knows what, right?
Well, it could be he got confused and went up
Yep.
instead of down, although I don't know how you confuse the basement with the first floor. But anyways,
Yeah,
we'll never know.
we're not there. Exactly. RIT Chief heard Firefighter 1's Mayday call on an unknown channel. There was a delay between receiving the call and IC declaring a Mayday emergency. The Mayday did not include the unique identifier, so no one knew who it was or where, no lunar. But the guy probably didn't have a chance to do lunar. He was opening his mask and trying to survive.
Mm-hmm.
Despite the learning of a possible Mayday, the incident commander declared no Mayday. He actually said it on the radio, even though someone told him there was a Mayday. Based on evidence, not all members operating on scene were aware of a Mayday emergency. At least one firefighter assigned to search for the firefighter that was missing was not aware he was searching for a firefighter. He heard a pass alarm, but he discounted it as a false alarm. That's unfortunate. Yeah.
Wow.
The third of the 3 civilian victims being removed from the building while firefighters were searching for the firefighter presented a small degree of confusion because you had 3 other victims plus a firefighter.
Mm-hmm.
Once located, Firefighter 1 did not receive emergency breathing air. So they didn't...
Even though the RIP pack was right there.
That is a wondering one. They just thought it was easier just to drag him out. I don't know.
Probably. And I can understand that thinking. It's only 25 feet to the exit.
Yeah.
But have you ever tried dragging a down firefighter
yes, I
any
have.
distance?
It's hard.
I have.
It takes forever. Yeah.
It is very
was it Brunacini's in Phoenix? They wrote that article. RIT is not rapid. Yeah.
Yeah.
In conclusion, this incident highlights the critical importance for firefighters entering a structure together, staying together, exiting together. Critically important that you establish radio comms with members outside the structure prior to entry, that inexperienced firefighters have close supervision during high hazard operations like a below grade fire. Additionally, the report of a potential Mayday should be treated as an actual Mayday until it's proven otherwise with a team member and established communications. Firefighter 1 would have received immediate assistance had he experienced his SCBA emergency, significantly reducing the risk of serious injury. The recommendation...
But I will say again, when they rolled up on this fire,
it was
and the lieutenant went in and said, it's a smoldering couch.
Yep.
They did not see this as a high-risk fire.
Nope.
It was, rookie, go in the basement and put that fire out.
Exactly.
That was basically the attitude from what I read of this.
Perfect job. And the other crew went to the back and opened the door.
And it all changed.
And command didn't issue that order. It wasn't coordinated with attack. They just did it. Right?
Yep.
Because they always do.
There's a whole list of little recommendations. We've talked about most of them. Stay together, radio checks, et cetera, et cetera. We don't need to probably do these, but they did implement some changes in the department trying to fix this. So I don't think I have any more recommend.
Well, I take there's something missing with the rapid intervention team. So sure, immediately provide down firefighter with breathing air. One member is assigned as air firefighter, but act immediately on that Mayday. It's just like a safety officer doesn't wait to go to incident command and say they're doing something unsafe. You stop, you intervene, you do it now.
Yeah, I heard a Mayday. What are we doing? Yeah,
and the RIT team has to go in.
But the interesting thing about this that I think comes out of the recommendations or the findings of that second, the OSHA investigation, and I wasn't aware of this. It wasn't what I thought it was. They said the Mayday occurred on an unknown channel. It wasn't on the tactical channel. And the battalion chief coming in who heard it probably had his radio on scan.
Right.
Or some other radio in the vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
So they didn't know what channel the guy was
point.
on.
Yep.
So how many tactical channels might he have been on? and he wasn't on the command channel because command never heard it. So you go to each tactical channel, say, "Hi, anybody out there got a Mayday? Hi, anybody out?" Like it just, which is where check the radio channels before you even go in, and maybe they did, and maybe he changed the channel when he was fumbling with his SCBA. That's possible. There's questions that you don't have answers to, but clearly nobody knew because nobody was monitoring that channel except one guy who happened to hear it. So
if I'm incident command and I declare no Mayday, I want to make sure I'm confident
that's kind of
that
bold.
it is no Mayday. So how do I do that? I say radio silence. Is there a Mayday? Now, what happens if firefighter plumber is unable to respond and there's silence?
What channel do you do that on, Ron?
What channel do you do that on? Tactic channel. That's what I'm doing.
The assigned.
Right? Yeah. But then the assigned tactic channel.
This is not unsimilar to what happens in Rock Falls, Illinois, in the same year, in the same month that the $31 million lawsuit was awarded against the fire chiefs, because again, they didn't know for half an hour the guy was missing in the basement. They didn't have somebody monitoring all the channels. They didn't have good command and good span of control. It's all the same stuff. In the same month.
Command did the right thing, though. They called a par.
They did. Yep.
They did the right thing.
They did.
And eventually the engine coughed up and said, "We're missing a guy."
Yeah, and they called the par in Rock Falls too. Eventually,
took 10 minutes.
It wasn't right. Yep.
Took 10 minutes to par, but.
And the other thing is, par requires you to say "man missing, last known," and that wasn't done either. So, anyhow, I mean, it's like you say, we can armchair quarterback this, but at the end of the day, we don't want another firefighter lost. So, how can we? Hold ourselves accountable to that. That's the key. That's what this is all about.
Podcast. Exactly. So thank you everyone for listening to another episode of the Emergency Traffic Podcast. Give us a like or a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button if you're listening on YouTube or whatever you're listening on. I want to thank Denis, of course, for another performance on our podcast here. We thank you very much for your input and hope that continues. And we thank Ron for joining us for the first time and hope you'll want to come back and join us for some other episodes. The podcast is growing. What was it? 600% growth or something last year. So people are slowly listening.
That's awesome.
And hopefully you never have to use anything from here, but it might make you think about it the next time you go to a call. As Sergeant Phil Esterhaus used to say on Hill Street Blues, now let's be safe out there. Any last words from you guys?
Right on.
Well, I just want to say that this was, a relatively bread and butter, simple fire until a couple serious errors were made and a lack of really good command procedures laid over the top of that. And the outcome was a tragic loss of a firefighter. You could see it happening. It could happen to you. You need to learn from these things before they do.
My only comment is to add on to what Danny said, and that is size up is critical. And I don't know, we talk about exposures, we talk about, whether whether we're going to risk a lot to save a lot. The end of the day, we have to look at all of the aspects before we release the thoroughbreds into the incident. So we got to communicate out. We got to divide the incident up. Maybe it is by division, whatever it is, divide it up so that we always make sure that span of control is in place. That we have a supervisor. That's our promise in firefighting and in ICS. That's our promise. You will have a supervisor to report to, and that each one of us knows what that plan is. So I think at the end of the day, we have to do a better job of sizing up. We have to do a better after-action review so that culminates without life loss in a better response. So we do what is right and we take the time to do it collectively, collaboratively, with a high degree of confidence. We're going into something that we understand. What impact could this particular, is it residential? Are there aspects in here that we don't know? chemicals, all kinds of issues. So I think we just need to do a proper size up, communicate that out so that everybody knows their roles and their responsibility and who their supervisor is and what channel that we're on. So this is not new. We've been talking about this forever, and now we just have to slow down.
You guys kind of long-winded, I think. I don't know, for a summary. But yeah, size up. What was the wind and where was it coming from? I agree. Excellent. Thank you very much, everyone.
Yeah. Slow down.
Yep.
Merry Christmas.